Thank you very much. And this is Tim Murphy. I'm a business intelligence consultant here at Pragmatic Works. And today we are going to talk about SSIS expressions. And I guess that poll, that was an interesting poll. I know I could have asked also if you're fluent with another logical programming language. I wonder how many of you are fluent maybe in another language. And if you are, hopefully this session will not be as painful to you as it was for me to learn that language. But anyway, I won't let that intimidate me. But if you are fluent in another language, those skills should translate over to SSIS once you get used to the difference in syntax and some of the quirkiness. But if you're new, some of you that are maybe very new, you should be fine as long as you can think logically and as in analyzing the sentence if then. You probably can do that. So anyway, let me skip right over here. There we go. What I'd like to cover today, a few things. What are expressions and where to use them, and of course we'll look at some examples of that. And then casting in SSIS. One of the most problematic things in expressions is casting and the quirkiness of that. So we'll look at that. And using variables in expressions. Variables, you know what variables are. They're changing values that can be used in expressions. So we look at that example of that. And then troubleshooting some expressions. I've done a lot of conversion of DTS packages where there's a lot of translation needed from maybe ActiveX or some other code. And we had to write SSIS expressions. And so we'll look at some examples that I've seen over the years I've been doing that. So let's go right into bids. All I have is that on the slide. So you should be seeing bids here. And SSIS, I still call it bids. This is actually 2008, so it was still being called bids then, I guess. So here we are in the SSIS, and the first thing that I wanted to talk about with expressions is where they are used, and show you what one of them is. So basically, any task in SSIS, whether it be a data flow or a control flow task, any send mail task, anything, you can build expressions on the various properties. So for example, the send mail task, if I go over to the properties window over here, expand that up a little bit because we'll be looking at it, you'll see there's a tab here called expressions, and if you expand that, you can see an ellipsis will open up, and all the properties that can have expressions are listed here. So you could select any of these, the BCC line, CC line, whether to disable it, of course the subject, the to line, the name, those things can be configured with expressions. So you would come in here and say, look, we want to change the from line. That would be an expression. You click on the ellipsis and pull up the expression builder. Now the easiest way to build the expressions in SSIS is with the expression builder, and if you've done any work, you've probably done that, so you know what that is. But basically this gives you these drop-down variables and various objects that are available for your expression. It gives you the mathematical functions, string functions, these various functions, as well as what I really wanted to talk about first, the typecasts. And SSIS is very, what's the word? It's very explicit on its data types, and if you try to compare data types or add data types that are different, you'll run into problems when creating expressions. So the way we do that with SSIS is we cast everything. So for example, if I was to say the string value of 1 equals, or I want to see if it equals 1, that would not work because you can't compare a string to an integer. But the way you could do that is you would cast it, and the casting is very simple. All you do is you cast it by taking one of these typecasts and put it right in front of the item to be casted. So then that would work. Now this, I don't know if this would evaluate here because I'm actually using, I think, let's see. No, it won't work because this property was not a Boolean. But anyway, that's what casting is, and I'll show you an example over here. Let's cancel this and talk about casting. Here we go. This is where I should have done it. So here's the expression on a variable. And once again, I'm going to go over here to the expression tab, hit the ellipsis, and type in 1, or the string value of 1 equals 1. And if I try to evaluate this now, it will fail because data types, string, and integer are incompatible. So we get a message there. So the way we would fix that is, again, simply typecasting it. And again, you could drag this over here, or you could type. You could type in dt underscore I4, which will cast that string as an integer. As long as that string will cast as an integer, then that would evaluate properly. So basically, it would say it's true. Now, if this was something like a alphabetical character, and I tried to cast it, and you'll see we would get another error because we're attempting to cast an integer out of a string, which can't be done. Oh, my screen went blank. Hopefully I'm still there. Okay. So you can only cast something that would be an integer to an integer. So again, that works. So casting is very important, and that's one of the things that will give new programmers, new people to SSIS, that is, problems. So there are all the various data types in SSIS. They're all listed there. So you'd have to choose the correct one to fit your expression. And we'll use some others here in a little while. Okay. So that's casting. And now another place where we use expressions. Like I said, they can be used on tasks as far as the properties, any of the properties of a task. They can be used inside of a data flow, like this data flow right here. You can use them in the component called Derived Column. You can use expressions. And so this is a pretty long expression. We'll look at it in a little bit. And another place you can use expressions is on the control flow for conditional logic between tasks, like this data flow task followed by this Friday only script task. And right now I have an expression on this precedence constraint that says, we'll look at it, it's a Boolean, and it says if this variable equals true, then on success, we will continue down this flow. There is something wrong with it, and you'll probably catch that if you're experienced. So right now, if I run this package, let me get rid of this. Execute the package, and I also didn't mean to run that, but anyway, you'll see that the data flow task ran, and then the Friday only script task ran. Now, today is Thursday, so first let me disable this. Today's Thursday, so I don't want this to run, so something was wrong here, and that's the next thing I wanted to cover here, in that whenever you're checking to compare for a Boolean, you have to use two equal signs. So what I did before is I said set this Boolean Friday test equal to true. And so when I tested it, it was true. But now if I say compare Friday test to true, again, it should work. If I say OK and I run this package, today is Thursday. Oh, so it works. OK, good. So basically, the expression said, OK, run this task and only run this task if this variable expression evaluates to true. All right. And the way we got to that was we had a variable called BOL Friday test. It's another place you can have expressions. You can have expressions on variables as well. And let me show you what this expression is. We'll go over here to the variable, click on the variable, go to the properties, and once again you'll find there's an expression tab. If I click on the ellipsis, you'll see this expression. And basically it's looking at the date part of getDate and getting the day of the week. And if that day of the week equals 6, then it returns true. But today is the 5th day of the week. Is that correct? See, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Yes, today is the 5th day of the week. So basically we're saying if 5 equals 6, be true. But in this case, since today is Thursday, this will evaluate as false. And just to make sure, just to show that this would work, let me do something here. Let me change the day of today on my system. And we'll run that again. So right now today is December 19th. I'm going to change it to December 20th. You can't see what I'm doing, can you? So I'm changing today to the 20th on my system. And now if I run this package, both tasks run, because when it got to the expression, it evaluated as true. So that's the other place we can use expressions. So my Friday test evaluated as true in this case. Now, when you're creating expressions, I showed you the expression builder by going to Expressions and clicking the ellipsis. And in here you can type expressions and you can test them to see if they evaluate. Like if I did it, I tested it, it'll give me some error. Then you can figure out what your error is and fix that error if you typed it wrong or casted it wrong. So anyway, that's the expression builder. The advantage of using that is you do have all these things you can drag and drop. Let's build this expression again. And one of the expressions I used was the date part. So what we would do is grab the date part, and you'll see that it creates placeholders here. This tells you what you need to have for this function to work. There's a little description here as well. But anyway, if you have the date part, of course this is something you have to learn, either Google Books Online, whatever. Find out what they are. For the day of the week, the expression is DW. So that's why I used that. And then for the date, I was using the getDate function. And instead of having to type that, I can just drag it. And it'll fill in for me automatically. So it makes it easy to use the expression builder. Then again, I want to see if the day of the week equals, once again, it's 2 equal signs. And I simply said if the day of the week is 6, that means it's Friday. I wanted this to evaluate as true. And we can test it. So the good part about using the expression builder is that you can use this evaluate button. When you're in the control flow and you're working with expressions right here, you don't have an expression builder. So you either have to type this correctly from the start or type it, and if suppose you were to do something like type a value that's not there. If you test it, it'll tell you what's wrong, but you don't have any of those drop-down things to help you build the expression. So one way that you can get around that is to build expressions, just a little tip here, is build expressions in variables that you're going to use in other places. So let's add a variable. And well, this is going to call just test expression. And we can then go, in fact, you don't have to do anything else. Just do that and click on the expression ellipsis. And now we can build an expression for this variable and kind of test it as we go. So let's say we wanted to do, again, some function like Actually, let's do a date function. Let's call it, well, let's do date add. All right, so now we have 3 placeholders here that need to be filled in. And first of all, it's the date part. In this case, let's go with the year. And it's a little bit different than SQL in that you use double quotes. Let's try year. And let's go back 1 year from today. So -1. And then again, drop in our get date value. Okay, so if we do that and evaluate, we should see that we basically are going back 1 year prior to today, which 12/20/2012, that would be correct. So if I do that and I say OK, you'll notice something on our variable. Whoops, nothing changed, right? So what did we do wrong? Well, whenever you create an expression on a variable, you also have to say evaluate that variable as an expression. So the property here just needs to be changed to true. And then once we do that, if we look back at the variable again, you'll see something interesting. I don't know if you noticed before, but it said integer before. But now it's saying it's a date time. That's because it automatically figured that out for you. And that's kind of an advantage of doing it this way. Now, if that's not what I wanted, I can use the same test expression. I'm just going to call it test expression because it's something I'm used just to building expressions. Let's go back into the expression again. Click on the ellipsis. And I wanted something totally different. I'm just going to build a string like computer name is whatever. And then we can grab these variables over here and grab the computer name, the system computer name. Well, that's the creator name. Creator. How about the creator computer name? I like that. So here's the creator computer name. Added to computer name is, if we evaluate that, it tells you the name of my computer. So if we say OK, there we go. It automatically changes to a string type. Let's do one more. And instead, let's do another string function, or date time function, that is, and go date difference. Oops, let me erase this first. So we're going to go date difference. And again, there's 3 placeholders for this one as well. So we need a date part to check the difference. And so we're going to check the number of days, maybe. So let's go with days. Number of days from between, and for start date, since I don't have one, let's see if do I have one? Oh, I do. Okay. Let's use this variable right up here. So for the start date, I'm going to grab a variable, and the name of the variable I'm going to use is this user dt null date time. So I can just drag that down. I don't have to type it at all. Drag it down. It fills in for me automatically. And then I'm going to grab today. So the difference between those 2 dates in days. If I evaluate this, it's 41,000 days. That's a lot of days. So when I say OK, you can see that it's automatically changed to int 32. So it's just kind of a handy way to create expressions and test them and see if they're doing what you expect them to do. You can use the expression builder, again, by clicking on the expression ellipsis and build them. And then this may be another, then you'd use this variable in your control flow. Or you may just use it as an expression on something like this where you cannot actually use the expression builder. Let's see. So actually, in this case, I'd want a Boolean. So let me come up with a Boolean. So here's what my Boolean would possibly be if I'm going to just use the same expression I just used. So if that's greater than 10,000, then I want this to be true. And it is, because I think we remembered, what was it, 41,000? So now we have a Boolean expression that we know works. We know this works because it's working in this variable. So what we could do is grab this expression one more time. I know I keep going back and forth, but this is one way to do it. So I grab this expression, and I can copy it because I know it works. And now I can use it right here. And I know I have a good expression that will work, and I can use it in my control flow. Not that I would ever use that particular scenario, but at least that gives you the ability to use the expression builder in a place where you normally wouldn't be able to. Okay, so let me see here what. Okay. So I showed you using variables and expressions as well. We'll probably look at a little more casting and variables, so some of the other examples. So here's some other examples I want to show you. In fact, we'll look at this data flow task first of all. Basically, I have a source here, and the source itself is using a variable called SQL string source. So the way I built that was with this expression over here. So I'm going to go back to the expression builder. And you can see there's a lot to this one. But basically what it's doing, it's creating a string expression, which is going to be my SQL statement. And since we're using variables, it'll evaluate dynamically. So here's how to evaluate. Select these columns from where birth date equals 21 and the birth month equals 12. So basically what we're doing here is we're wanting to return everyone who has a birth date that's today. I don't know why it's saying 21. Let me go back. Okay. This is why. So I created some variables that we're going to use in this expression. First one is called int day number. If I go to the expression builder here, you can see it's getting the date part of get date. Because I added one. I was testing this for today, yesterday. I don't want this to be here. I want to basically get today's day number. So here we go. Today is the 20th. So here's my expression for that. Date part, day of get date. And also want to get the month number. And it's very similar. Go to the expression ellipsis. And we're getting the month part of get date, which is 12. Okay, and then we built a SQL. I'll grab this over here. I wanted to build a SQL statement. And the way I did this first was I hard-coded it just to see if it was going to work. So basically I selected these columns from here where, in my parameter here, or my filter, is where the birth date equals 20 and the birth month, the day of the birth date equals 20 and the month of the birth date equals 12. And for preview that, there was actually one person. That's why I was glad there was a person. All right. Now, we want to make this dynamic so that it's not hard-coded with today's date. So we needed to build a SQL string source. So let me select that again, and we'll just rebuild it. me cut all this out here. So I basically copied my query out with it hard-coded in. And for this to become a string that can be used, we have to add the quotes around it, double quotes. So if we evaluate it, we get the same expression that we had before. But we want this to be dynamic. So instead of having 20 and 12 there, I'm going to use the variables that we created. So over here we have a variable called int day number and int month number. So in place of the 20, I'm going to grab the day number, and in place of the 12, I'm going to grab the month number. All right, now if I evaluate this, it's still going to evaluate okay, but it's actually using those variables, and that's not what we want. We want the values. So the way we have to do that is end right here with a quote, and then to concatenate, add a plus sign. And at the end of that integer, we need to add with another quote, and the month number equals, end of that with a quote, and then concatenate again with the month number. All right, that seems well and good. That makes sense that we're adding the variables, but we're going to have a problem if we try to evaluate this. It will fail. I'll show you that. It'll fail. It'll give you a message that the data types string and integer are incompatible for the operator plus. So we can't add integer types to string types. So we have to cast, and that's what I talked about at the beginning, casting. So we need to cast this integer to a string, and it's simple enough. Just grab the cast type that you want, place it in front of this variable. It pops in there, and we have to give it a length. Since this is a day, we know it's never going to be longer than 2 characters, so we'll put 2 there. And the same thing for the month number. This will be at the longest, whatever it be, is 2. Okay, that seems well and good. And so if we do evaluate it, it does evaluate properly. And now you can see that it pops in those values of 20 and 12. So the expression builder helped us build this expression. We can say OK, and there's my string SQL source. It is evaluated as an expression. So I can go back to my OLEDB source and use that variable here. And we preview it, and there is one person. So, all right, another place to use expressions is to maybe change the name of a file name or append the date. And that's what we're going to do here. If I run this right now, execute this task, I'll take that one person and put them into a flat file destination. And that destination right now is pointing at my C drive under demo, so we'll look at that real quick. Go back over here so you can see that, C drive, demo. Okay, it just created it today. Today's the 20th, text document, and there should be one person in that file. So there it is. But I would like to actually have that file have today's date on it. And the way we can do that is with expressions as well. And we would do that with the expression on the connection. So let's create an expression on that connection. And click on the ellipsis. And in this case, the property we're going to choose is the connection string. So click open our expression builder. And we can do it right here. So basically we know this is going to be a string. So let's go ahead and start with our double quotes. We're going to fill that in with C:\\demo. That was the name of my directory, and I'm going to call it my extract.csv. And that's all. That's not going to work because whenever you have the backslash, that's an escape character in SSIS, and it'll tell you that if you say evaluate escape sequence, it doesn't know what that is. So basically, we want to have the literal backslash, so escape character would have to be in front of that. So the escape character backslash will now evaluate to C:\demo my extract. But we also want to have the date in this. So my extract underscore and then today's date. Well, we could try get date and put it here. And you probably have already guessed you can't just do that. That would definitely bomb. You have to add or concatenate plus. And if you are already ahead of me, you know that that will also not work because we've got to cast this. This is a date type. We'll get a message there that you cannot add a string to a timestamp. So we have to cast getDate as a W string again. So let's grab that, typecast. Whoops, W string, and oh, how long is a getDate? It's pretty long. I'm going to put a 30 in here just to make sure we get enough spaces. But I'll put in 50 just to make sure. So now it's going to be my extract plus the date plus CSV. Now if we evaluate this, we're going to see that it's probably not what we really want, but it does look like it's going to work. If we say OK, we're getting a warning or an error message here. And the reason is the file name, if I hover over it, well, let me show you something. Here we go. Yeah, the file name property is not valid because it has invalid characters, and that's because getDate has characters that do not work. So let's go back to our expression. And we'll fix that. One way we can do this is just by casting it again before we cast it as a string as just the date. So we'll bring back just the date of that, see if that works. Oh. Well, there's all kinds of types. That's not the one I want. I want a DB date because this would also have invalid characters. So I can drag it over or I can just type in front of it here DB. And now if I evaluate that, we'll have a date that will work. So that would be a valid file name. So we could use that. And so now if we run this file and execute it, or in this task, it's successful. And you can see that over in my directory called demo, there is a file now there with today's date. You can see where I tested it a couple of days ago and yesterday. So here's the file with the same information and today's date appended to it. You could do the same thing by parsing out the date. I don't know if I'm going to have time to show all that. Well, we might. But that can be done by actually pulling out date parts. So you could do something similar to this, but instead of doing the full get date, you could get a date part and get the hour and get the minute. So you could pull out the minutes or pull out the hours and actually add that to it. So you could, your imagination is open to you to decide how much you want to, or how you want to use your expression. Okay, go back to control flow here, and oh, I'm getting that error probably because of the mappings. I don't like errors. Let me do that. Okay, cool. I'll disable this for now. Let's look at a few more string dates here real quick. And let me enable it. The derived column is another place where you'll do a lot of expressions, and so we're going to look at a lot of those here now, as much time as we have left. So here's a derived column that is going to kind of do what I was talking about before, parsing out dates. My source here is basically consists of some dates as strings, and this first date is 10/10/01. The second date is sort of like a blank date, and this is a date. This is a null, or just an empty string. And then I have some dates here at the bottom that are in the format of year, YYYY, MMDD, year, month, day. And I've run into this with DTS and other conversion projects where dates had to be conformed, and they came from two different sources, and so we had to figure out a way to do it. So this one had this. In the old system, basically, maybe what happened is you had the backslash or the slashes, and if a date was not there, then if it was supposed to be null, it would have slashes. And in the new system, they only put in numbers, and so if there wasn't a date, it would be blank. So we want to make all of these turn out to be dates that will work with SSIS. So, I created an expression here. We'll see if this will do that. So basically, we use the conditional expression. Let me just rebuild it. And the conditional operator is right here. The if-then condition is basically a question mark and a colon. So if we were just to drag this in here, you'll see that it's expecting a Boolean expression, and when that Boolean expression is true, it brings back a result, and when it's false, it brings back a result. So our Boolean expression, knowing what our data types are there, before I drag that there, let's grab a function called trim, because also some of these dates may have spaces in them. I want to get rid of those. So in SQL, you have a left L trim and a right R trim. In SSIS, you have the trim, which trims left and right characters, which is handy. So now I want to trim the string date and ask the question if that is equal to a blank string, which is basically two quotes with nothing in between them. So if that is blank, then I want to have a null date for my database. And so we have null functions that we can use. String functions, there we are, null functions. And in this case, let's use the DTDB date. Just drag that right here. When true, I want a null date. And when false, I want to put the string date there. Now this would be a good expression, except for the fact that I haven't casted this. I also need to cast string dates because both results have to be the same. I can't have a date here and a string here. So we'll cast this as, find our typecast one more time, and typecast this as a DTDB date. Okay, when we click away from it, you see how it turned black. Black means that it does parse correctly. There's still something wrong with it, and we'll look at that. And when you do that, it'll automatically tell you which data type it is. So I could say OK and run this, but we'll see what happens. It's going to fail. And we'll get a message here that blah, blah, blah. Let me show you what it says. It doesn't really tell you a lot. It gives you error code. And in fact, I Googled this code, and the second thing I found, it says you have to write a script task to fix this. That's not true, but I can't always get good answers. But the reason for that is because, stop the debugging. Remember, when we looked at this data, you notice some of them have that. So that's a problem. Plus, they're in different formats. So we got to format this date for each of these. So we need to ask a question besides whether or not it's blank. We need to, let me make this a little bigger here. In addition to asking if it's blank, we also need to ask if the trim of the date, and you can also type in these functions. I'm just going to do that. Trim. Functions don't matter as far as case. And the column is called string date. So we could drag that over, or we could type it. So I'm going to type it, string date, string dates equals, and since I know my data, so if it has two of these slashes, then I want a null. Otherwise, I want to bring back the string date. So this should work, right? Well, only problem is it doesn't. Why is it doing that? Because, like I said, you can type in the functions instead of dragging them, and you can also type in the names of columns, but if you do type them in, they have to be exact, uppercase, lowercase. So I made a mistake there. And I made another mistake. String dates. Okay. Well, all right. If I hover over this, you'll see what the error is. So let me hover. And while we're hovering, the expression might contain a value tag, blah, blah. And it goes away before you can read it all. Well, the way you can get around that is you can say OK. When you say OK, it'll give you the same message. It'll give you time to read it. Okay, I actually don't see it, but I know there's an issue. Oh, string dates. Okay, let me grab the expression and compare it. Ah, duh. Okay, I said I wanted to see if this was, if it was blank or if it was that. Well, I didn't put the or in there. So I get for not following my note. So the operator in this case is the or that we need to add. So the or operator is, the logical or that is double pipes. So we can drag them over or we can type them in here. So now we're saying if this trim is blank or if the trim equals that, then we want the DB date to be null. Otherwise, we want string dates. So this does work. All right. Okay. So now if we run, we get another error. And it's that same error we got before, which is very nondescript. And that is because, as I was heading before, is we do need to parse out that date, because some of them have the slashes, and some of them don't. So, okay, here we go. If it's blank or that, we want null. That part's good. But what we're going to have to do is do a substring of these string dates. So let's just grab that real quick. Look at it. Substring function. Substring. And again, I'll just grab it so I don't mistype again. So we want the substring of string dates starting at position Well, actually, you know what? We're going to have to do one more question. So starting at position 1 for 2 characters long, we're going to ask if that is equal to 20. Yeah, this is the way we had to solve this. So basically, this is a nested if, then, if. Then, if that's the case, we have to parse out the string, which would be, again, another substring of the string dates. Need to make it a little bit bigger. Starting at position 1 for 4 characters. This is going to get us the year. So if it starts with 20, I want to get the year and add that to let's use a dash. So it'll be 2000 whatever plus substring again, we'll grab string dates, drag it over, starting at position 5, position 5, oops, 5, and the length of that will be 2 characters plus substring again. Let's grab substring. This is getting long, as you can see, but that's okay. We can do it. String date, starting at position. You know what? Instead of using substring, I know my data, and in my data, whenever this is 20, I know I can use the right to, so I'll use the right function in this case. The right, drop that in there. The right 2 characters will bring us back the day. Okay, so now what we're saying is that if it's blank or it's a empty / then we want null. Otherwise, if it starts with 20, then we want to parse it out as the year, month, and day with dashes between. Oh, and I left out a dash, so I need to put another dash in here. Okay, and then we have one more then. If that's not the case, then we can actually take that date that was there. But this is a string, so we have to cast it as a DT DB date. I can type that, DT _ DB date. Okay, that's a long expression. All right, let's see if that works. Well, nope, it doesn't. Okay, so I'm missing oh, okay. I'm still trying to, the results have to be the same, and I'm substringing here, so this becomes a string, so I have to cast this as well to a date. So let's grab this whole expression here, go all the way over to the right of that, and then this will also have DTDB date as its typecast. DTDB date. Maybe that'll work. Oh, it does. Amazing. Long string, right? So now if we say OK and run it, we actually get 7 rows. Yay. So again, just kind of review what happened there. Here's what our data looked like, so we couldn't put this into a date. It had to be parsed out for the year, month, and day. All right, so that's a very common kind of expression thing I've had to use going from DTS to SSIS. Okay, let's see what we're getting close to time. I was going to mention Unicode, how whenever you cast, Unicode is the default value for strings. And so if you have a column that you wanted to concatenate, like the current year plus the name of the get date, it automatically casts to Unicode. So if you needed to change that, you'd have to put the cast in front of it, make it a string. Also, whenever you do a conditional expression, the question mark with the colon, and the result is a string, then the Unicode, it would be the default. So again, if you wanted to make this a string, you would just simply have to cast the entire expression as a string of a different Unicode type. So we could do that here. DT string with a length of, I'm not sure what it needs to be here. We'll say 20 and 1252 code page. And that's why I was getting that warning, because it was trying to send a Unicode into a non-Unicode. That was why we had an error there. Nested if-then. We kind of did that with the one that I just showed you, had if-then, if, and if. Now we're going to run out of time. And there may be specific questions, not sure. But this one quickly was taking an if column 1, the first character is A, and the length is greater than 8, then we wanted to bring back a certain string. Otherwise, if it started with B and was greater than 8, we wanted to bring back a different string. Else, we want to bring back another. So you can basically do if, then as much as you need to. It can get pretty complex if you have a lot of ifs. Date time. Okay, I showed you the date part, so I think I've basically covered most of what I could. I had a little thing I was going to show you here from one of our coworkers. Had done an expression to see if I have some IDs here. Some of them have numbers and some of them have characters. There is not a function for seeing if there is numeric value. So this expression was going to do that. It was going to check to see if the ID cast as an integer would equal the integer. If it does, then it passes it down one way. And if it doesn't, then it would fail the component. And we would configure it to redirect that row. And the bad rows, we would then subdivide the string, taking away the first character. And the good rows would pass straight down, union all, and it would work. So anyway, basically, I think we're about out of time. I have to let you go. If there's any quick questions, maybe just generally, we can answer if you have.
Yeah, there's a couple. Let's see.
Yeah.
When creating a send-mail task on an error, is it possible to create an expression that would include the error text?
Yes. You could create a variable that would, or actually you could use an event handler. They could grab that, write it into a variable, and include that, yes.
Okay, and the next question says, is there an evaluation for isDate in expression, especially in derived column task?
Like I was talking about with is, to see if a value is a date, there is not, but you could use this same idea where you can take your column and cast it as a date and see if it equals itself. If it does, then you know that it was a date. Otherwise, it'll fail, and you could conditionally send it down a different path.
Okay. And Cheryl says, is there a website where I can see lots of syntax examples?
Yes, and I did want to show you that as well. If you go, and if you can't remember, you can just type SSIS expression or just SSIS cheat sheet, and that'll bring you to Pragmatic Works page, and there's a great cheat sheet. So just Pragmatic Works, or if you can just type SSIS cheat sheet.
Yeah, and that, guys, you can find that under our Learning Center, under Resources, and I believe those are all right there for you. So thanks for asking that question, Cheryl. Paul says that Bids Helper is a good tool as well.
Yes, for building expressions, and I didn't do it, but there's actually a tool here that I have called BI Express, which is one of Pragmatic's tools that allows you to build expressions as well. I'll just pop it open real quick. It gives you all the same functionality, but just a lot easier. Plus, there's templates that can be used. You have all these built-in expressions you can use. So BI Express is definitely like if you want to get the beginning of the previous month or beginning, gives you expression.
Okay. And Tim, can you put up that first slide that you had? I think it had your contact information on it.
Yes, I will do that again.
Perfect. And then we'll take this one last question. It says, where to find description for all types of null or string data types?
Books Online has that. Yeah, I know it's in there. Let me see if I can find that real quick.
And just a quick reminder, everyone, our sessions are recorded and will be made available by the end of the week. If you go to pragmaticworks.com, go to that Learning Center and click on Free Training. You'll find our future webinars and you'll find all of our past webinars right there for you.
Yeah, I'll see if I can get that and post it.